Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Berk. Our topic, sexual communication. This topic of sexual communication is particularly important for those who have a partner or are married, especially for those with a strong bond between partners. I included a section of 1.5 pages on sexual knowledge in my book, but there will be a special book dedicated to it. I've already started writing it. We can consider this as something like chronology of that book. Of course, in order to have an opinion on a topic and to be able to talk about it, you need to know that topic. That's why you can read books, watch videos. It's important to learn about this topic. So why is sexual communication important? What was the main topic in sexuality? You know, we always used to say this like a slogan, enjoying pleasure, giving pleasure, but everyone is responsible for their own satisfaction. Now, in order to give pleasure to your partner, you need to know them, both generally and specifically. What does this mean? So for example, women like their breasts. This is general knowledge, this is sexual knowledge. But there's also specific knowledge. So, you don't know whether your partner enjoys being touched on her breasts, being kissed, being caressed, or being licked. You can learn that asking her, therefore it's important to communicate about this topic as well. If we think that 40% of a relationship is based on transparency, the better and more harmonious that transparency is, the better the relationship will be. That's why sexual communication is important. The relationship will be that much better. That's why sexual communication is important. Now, there are very important topics to pay attention to in sexual education. Let me summarize these. First of all, you won't lose what you have in hand. So this is the most important topic. There will be no non-sexual talk or past questions. In other words, the issue should not start with sexuality and then move on to general partner problems, namely marriage problems. Our topic is only sexuality. And please don't ask questions about the past. I mean, I see on some websites questions that should be discussed or asked between partners. It says to describe the best sexual experience you've had in the past. So it's not very meaningful. The past is in the past. We need to look ahead. So let's please avoid asking questions about the past. Let's be in a positive conversation. There always needs to be a middle ground. Words like disapproval, judgment, and never shouldn't be too prevalent because these go beyond positivity. Beliefs, cultures, and traditions need to be taken into account because these all go beyond positivity. Beliefs, cultures, and traditions need to be taken into account. Everyone has their own upbringing style, everyone has their own beliefs, everyone has a general culture as well. Therefore, these are important too. Everyone has a general culture, so these are important too. If issues are going to be put on the table, and they should be, this should be done last. In other words, all the conversations should be done last so that the problem at hand can be solved. If you talk about the issue from the beginning, then certain problems will arise. Please pay special attention to these. So, should the questions include, this can also go in a systematic way. It can also be complicated, but in the end, there's an environment in sexuality, there's a space, time, frequency, visual, scent, etc. All of these exist in sexuality. So we need to talk about everything related to sexuality one by one. And there are also direct questions. And as I said at the end, you need to talk about the issues. Now, if I were a man, sometimes I get asked what the first thing a man should ask a woman is. If the bond between us is strong, I wouldn't ask this question to someone I've only been with for 3 days. But if the bond is strong, if I'm married or if I have a partner, and I had just one question to ask a woman, I would ask her this. How do you orgasm? Because the foundation of everything comes from here. About 70% of women experience vaginal plus clitoral orgasms. So during vaginal intercourse, the clitoris needs stimulation. Only a small percentage can orgasm through vaginal intercourse alone. 10% is also clitoral. This is very important because what was our topic? It was about receiving pleasure and giving pleasure. Now, for a woman or a person to reach orgasm, they need to experience pleasure. Knowing how you get pleasure and how you reach orgasm is very important and fundamental. I think if you're married, for example, this should be the first question you ask. After that, we can move on to other questions or ask them later. There are questions about the environment and setting. These questions about the environment and setting are very important. Why? Because I had made a video before, if you remember, it's about the top 10 fantasies of women and men. Look, the top 3 fantasies of women are always about the environment, setting, romance, etc. So this is quite important for women. It was about that. So this is quite important for women. So please, let's ask these questions. Women should ask men and men should ask women. So, for example, is there a specific place at home that you would like to choose? What should the preferred environment be like? So maybe lighting a candle could help your partner enjoy more. It's a simple situation. The second is the frequency of time. So here, of course, depending on the situation, sometimes there are kids around and you need to make a decision about that. Sometimes, yes, you might always want to have sex in the morning, but if the environment isn't suitable, then you need to determine the time and place. These can be asked. The question of how often to do it is important because sometimes one partner might want it 3 times a week while the other might want it once a month. Look, I'm repeating this. We need to find a middle ground here without judgment, without starting a fight, and without arguing. So one who wants a lot needs to come closer to the one who wants less and vice versa. But if one partner wants it every day and the other wants it once a month, there's really no middle ground to be found there. But this needs to be talked about sincerely. It doesn't matter how often you do it. What matters is quantity, not quality. It's not quantity, it's quality. So the quality of the relationship is important. As I said, some people do it once a month and are happy. First of all, if you're happy with the frequency of your relationship, there's no need to change it. But if someone is hiding something inside, they need to express it. This also needs to be talked about. But if someone is hiding something inside, they need to express it. This also needs to be talked about. The issue of appearance is important. There is visual appeal in a relationship, from clothing to watching things, etc. I think one of the most critical questions here could be, what part of my body turns you on? Because both sides knowing this can lead to playing around with it in terms of giving pleasure. This is important. This is about how women dress. For example, the guy might like her wearing something revealing. In some way this topic hasn't come up or they haven't mentioned it. This can be mentioned on this occasion, like watching erotic films, etc. These can also be asked. I'm not going into too much detail about them. Hearing and speaking are important. During a relationship, some people want to talk a lot. I mean, some people want to hear a bunch of amazing sexual words, slang terms, or they want to hear words that rev them up. Some people don't want that. This also needs to be discussed. But the question is this again, is there a word, sound, or something in the conversation that arouses you while making love? This needs to be asked. Smell is very important. So it's bad breath, body odor, perfume, room scent. I always say, for example, to men, choose the perfume that your wives like, that arouses your wives, or that they enjoy. It's not about what you want or what someone else wants. It can smell great to the whole world, but if your spouse or partner doesn't like it, it doesn't mean anything. Because you are together with your partner. So this is important too. The room scent is important. This issue of bad breath and sweat odor is important. We need to talk about this seriously. You shouldn't take it personally. Be offended in any way. You can say, my mouth smells a bit and it bothers me. This is a very normal thing. The other side shouldn't take it personally either. What's the goal? To be happier. Ultimately, to be happier. The topic of touch is important. Here, we shouldn't start the topic of touch with negative sentences. So where do you not want me to touch you? I should never touch. There's no such thing. It could be something I prefer less. But where do you want me to touch you? So, if I had just one chance to touch you, where would you want me to touch? And it's very important to describe this. For example, I would like to be touched on my neck. But how would you touch my neck? By squeezing? By touching? So, by doing something like that? By hitting? It also needs to say what it is. That's why the word describe is quite important. You can this here. Kissing is important. How to kiss? Some people want to kiss with someone crazy, some with someone with lips and so on. You can also talk about this among yourselves. Position is very important. Some positions can arouse certain people much more and can elevate the experience during intimacy. These things need to be known as well. So just like a man knows which food a woman likes the most, he should also know which position she enjoys the most. Are there any things you want to try? These can be discussed. We can talk about the positions that are the most challenging, or let's say less desired. We can talk about the positions that I don't really enjoy doing, oral sex, anal sex, etc. We need to talk about masturbation topics. So, what do you think about oral sex? What do you think about anal sex? Is there something you want from me regarding oral sex? This is important because if your partner only reaches clitoral orgasm, they will be able to achieve orgasm through oral sex. Then they will describe it to you like this, like this, like this, or during masturbation. I made a video about that too. So it's a video on how to perform clitoral massage. You can watch it. The same goes for women. So, during oral sex, ask your partner how the penis should be inserted or how you should do it. So, sometimes I ask, how should I perform oral sex? You should do it the way your partner wants. Ultimately, since you are giving pleasure to someone, providing general information isn't a big deal. Sex toys can be preferred. You know, in the later stages of marriage or a relationship, this can bring excitement, of course, if used correctly. We have a video about that as well. You can watch it. When, where, and how should we use sex toys? How can we use them without causing any issues, and how can we use them to enhance our experience? For example, during vaginal stimulation, about 70% of women who want clitoral stimulation are like this, you know. I think toys are important for women. For example, during vaginal intercourse, a small vibrating device like a tiny one that costs around 100 lira can make it easier to achieve clitoral orgasm during vaginal stimulation. These can be tried. It's not something that should always be done, but it can be tried and can bring excitement to the relationship. These can be discussed. There can be other topics as well. Another situation is direct questions. I mean, these are questions like, how do you orgasm during your first vaginal intercourse? You know, to enhance the dimensions of the relationship, to improve the sexual experience, and to get to know each other a bit better. It's about understanding what your partner wants or doesn't want while making love. Do I have a fantasy? What does my favorite way of orgasm feel like? In my sex life, my favorite, for example, we won't lose what we have in our hands. What do we love more? What do we love less? What are we doing really well? This always needs to be talked about. If we talk about the things that make it easier or harder for me to orgasm, it can lead to much better results. Problems should always be discussed last, but they definitely need to be talked about. Sexual disinterest and inability to orgasm, especially in women, is very common. Pain and discomfort in relationships are also quite common among women. There shouldn't be any pain or discomfort in the relationship. It should be something that brings pleasure to the relationship. From start to finish, it should be all about pleasure. It's something that brings pleasure to the relationship. It should be about pleasure from start to finish. Early ejaculation, which is common among men, can be discussed, as well as difficulties with erection. Of course, these things shouldn't just be talked about. For example, if there's a conversation about early ejaculation, what can be done about it? What solutions could there be? What can we do about it? What could the solution be for this? What can we do about this? When discussing problems, solutions also need to be talked about. Of course, you won't be able to solve most things on your own. You need to get some help. But while getting this help, your partner's emotional support will be very important. That's why problems should always be left for last. Yes, these are generally the things I will talk about. You need to ask each other these questions. You might be feeling embarrassed. It's okay. Your partner might be in a marriage due to cultural reasons, upbringing, and so on. Write these down on a piece of paper. I make people do that. Write these questions down on an A4 sheet of paper and write down the answers too. Then you do, oh, fine, and the matter is settled. After that, you can talk about it or not, I don't know. But if you want to be happier with your partner, the answers to these questions need to be given, and they should be answered as reasonably, logically, and positively as possible. Thank you.